Hello, mortals. I am the BookTube Goddess, the #1 drag queen booktuber on YouTube. And this is a special episode because I'm going to interview an author. And this is my first interview, and so please bear with me. This is the author of Brightly Burning and The Stars We Steal, which are young adult science fiction novels, which retell classics. And her new book has just been released this month, The Ivies. And of course, I am talking about the famous author tuber, Alexa Donne. How are you doing, Alexa?
So strange to hear myself referred to that way. I'm doing great. It's Saturday afternoon. Is it okay to spoil that we recorded this ahead of time?
I think people will figure it out.
I think they'll figure it out. The sun is shining, but not too much, which is my perfect medium. And yeah, I've almost got a book out in the world, and by the time this airs, it's going to be out.
That is so amazing.
It's weird every time. This is the third time I'm like, this is very strange.
And people will know because I did this makeup on my live stream and I talked about going to interview you. And if you want to see this makeup on my live stream, I'll leave a link up. But of course, you should never take makeup advice from a drag queen. So,
you never know.
You never know.
I feel like there are good tools and techniques there. You just have to are you leaving the house that day? I do that with YouTube makeup all the time where I'm like, I won't leave the house in this particular look if I go like real fun.
Well, let me show you something.
Yeah.
This is what I use a lot, and it is called Clown White. Clown White.
Now I get that. Okay, that makes sense to me.
So this makeup look was inspired by your book. There's blue pencils, pink erasers, and red blood splotches.
I love the blood. When they added the blood, because it wasn't on the first draft, and I was like, okay, you just took it to the next level. We've got some murder going.
By the way, I've been a big fan of yours because I started watching your channel when you were like maybe around 5K subscribers.
Oh, wow. You're old OG.
OG. Before Brightly Burning was even announced.
Well, when you mentioned the first two books, I was like, okay, I'm used to people not mentioning them anymore. So I was like, oh, all three of them. How cool.
I bought the first book, Brightly Burning, and I did like it a lot. And I liked the retelling of Jane Eyre. It's post-apocalyptic. Is it considered dystopian?
Yes, and my secret, I think I've admitted to it once or twice, is that yes, it is, and I just hid that in my queries and in all the marketing material. But it clearly is. It walks a fine line.
Okay, well, I love the world building, and
I love dystopian too, and like I feel everyone's pain on the writer side where people are like, dystopians, I want to write one. I'm like, yeah, the market, you just got to find a way to basically like you put a new face of makeup onto your dystopian to sell it as something else, because I love dystopian. It's some of my favorite world building.
Now, your second novel I didn't read because I didn't know the story of Persuasion, because I'm very basic with Austen, just Pride and Prejudice, and
that is totally fine. I am not an Austen snob. I know people who are. I haven't read every Austen.
Why did you pick Persuasion?
Because in large part because it's less done. That was like my first instinct, because my editor was like, well, what do you want to write next? Because I had a 2-book deal, and I actually had a different thing I wanted to retell, but it wasn't quite coalescing. And I thought, well, Bronte and Austen makes the most sense, but I can't do another Pride and Prejudice retelling. It just has been done, even though I adore Pride and Prejudice. And Persuasion, like Pride and Prejudice was my favorite as a teenager through my 20s, and Persuasion became my favorite in my late 20s because it's hardcore relatable the older you are. Basically, Persuasion is like although mind you, it's depressing that she's a spinster at 27. But at the time, that was like old age, right. Apparently. But it's a very like emotional, romantic novel. And it's mostly just that I had the right idea at the right time. I would have done some other retelling if I hadn't had the spark of how to do it in the same universe, because like by that point I had decided I should probably do a companion.
Do you think you'll ever go back to your science fiction universe?
Maybe. Maybe. I have a couple of YA sci-fi ideas that wouldn't be in that universe, and I'm probably more inclined to write them first, including the thing that was my original idea for my contract book. It's just so funny how it works. I pitched it to my editor, who left like a month later. The irony. She's now a huge agent, which is hilarious. But at the time, the one thing I wanted to base that retelling on is a trope that she loathed. So that challenged me to think about something else. And and then I landed on Persuasion, and I was in love with that idea so fully. But I still want to go back to that other one, which I don't want to like give away a free idea to someone, but it is it's not a classic retelling. It's not a book retelling. It is a media property retelling that I would like find a way around in terms of legal copyright things. But it's another romance. It's basically a romance story that I would put in space, but not the same universe. And then I have another one that I want to write a thriller in space. And so at this juncture, given how I went, I might write a space thriller a sci-fi thriller before I do romance again.
Have you ever thought about middle grade?
I have. My problem with middle grade is that I don't read enough of it currently, and thus I know I'm not prepared to write it. I've been really tempted though, because I love voice in middle grade, the voice of middle grade.
Me too.
So never say never, but I'm probably going to go into adult before I go into middle grade, just because I read so much adult fiction now, like thrillers. And then like for me, that's the bar. I have to be well read in something before I feel that I can write it. So I'm years off of thinking seriously about middle grade.
Well, if you do, here's an idea.
Yeah.
A red-headed orphan girl aboard the starship Avonlea. That's all I'm going to say.
That would be really... that is a good idea. Ooh. And I will say briefly, I had thought, could I do a third book in that universe? And I had thought about Anna Karenina briefly.
Ooh.
But then I was like, but would that ending be YA? If I stuck with it, I don't think it would work. Though that said, she says, I'm definitely pushing the envelope in terms of not having a happy ending in this book. I'm playing with endings because I feel like if it's a YA genre convention usually to have a happy ending. And I put that in quotes. It's not that this isn't happy, but it's not necessarily what people will be expecting. So maybe I could write a YA retelling of Anna Karenina, maybe. But I'm skeptical of my own skills, honestly, to pull that story off well.
Okay, well, talking about the Ivies, I was privileged enough to get the advanced copy, and I thought it was fantastic, and I'm not blowing smoke up your caboose because people know that I'll say what I think.
If you didn't like it, you could have quietly bowed out of this interview, right?
Right, or I wouldn't have said anything. But anyway,
right?
So I'm telling people this is a good book. But I don't usually read thrillers, much less young adult thrillers. And when I was reading the Ivies, I kept thinking, oh, this is a pretty good mystery. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute, it's a thriller. So tell me, Alexa Donne, what is the difference between a thriller and a mystery?
This is where I embarrass myself because I have both gotten this question, but also I've asked this question of myself because it's so, I know there are formal definitions. This book ultimately in the execution that I landed on, as well as my next one, actually, it sits in that space between genre-wise, they're not technically mysteries. Mystery, or at least the way that I think of mysteries, like I think about cozies, it's definitely not cozy. But it's not like breakneck thriller. Because there are also different kinds of thrillers. There's like the Tom Clancy style thriller or the Dan Brown style thriller where it's like, I think this sits in a nebulous middle space. It's like it's a mystery suspense thriller because it's about pacing and kind of how you derive stakes and tension. It's a thriller, but it has a lot more in common with domestic thrillers or psychological thrillers that you might read in adult, where there are points of slower pacing and tension. I'm so bad at this. But that's kind of how I think of it. It's definitely in the YA genre space. It is a YA thriller because of how YA thrillers work. But it sits in the middle space, especially with how the pacing is in the beginning and the middle, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But I feel like my third act is a thriller third act, and that
was my favorite part, actually.
I love the third act, and I think that's because and since you watch my channel, you know this. I'm finding this on the new one too. I write toward the third act. It's my favorite part. It's the part I want to write, so I think that they're the most exciting. Then the hard part is getting there.
Well, as I was reading it, I was like, I don't know, 75% way through. And I was like, oh, okay, I figured everything out. And then, wait a minute, twist. Wait a minute, this is not going to be a long 25% denouement. This is going to keep going. And it was really good.
Good, because I would hope, oh God, because like my nightmare is I don't want people to go, she doesn't follow her own advice. I thought about that denouement. When I wrote my ending, I was like, I can't mess this up. I might still have, but I was like, if you talk about that, I had better have it. And I actually had it so hard that my editor made me cut the ending in half. She was like, this is too much.
Oh.
But I've been accused of rushed endings before because I do read my reviews, and I was like, okay, I can't rush this one. And I know some people will still feel that it's rushed. I think it's 6 pages. No, it might be more. Let's see how many pages it is. And so just imagine it used to be twice as long. But in terms of, like the 75% mark, I threw a lot at you in a very short period of time. Okay. My final chapter is, that's actually pretty long. Okay. It is, oh no, I have to do math. This is the part we don't like, math.
2 hours later.
The ending is 14 pages. So I actually rewrote this ending 3 times. So the second version I turned into my editor was about twice as long as that. So it was like, okay, she was right. If it was pushing 30 pages, because word count wise, we cut it in half, the ending that I wrote. And it was over 3 chapters, not 2, not 1. So the editing process.
Could you read the first line of the Ivies? Because I thought that was a brilliant line of chapter 1.
And I'm someone, so chapter 1, not the prologue, right?
Not the prologue. No.
Yeah, because we can talk about process. The prologue didn't exist when I wrote the book. So the first line is the real first line, and I don't consider the prologue my first line. Today, half the seniors at Claflin Academy will die. And then the next line is, on the inside, that is.
I love that. That is so great.
Because it's true. Early decision day is brutal. Although, as I kind of cover in the book, only rich people really do early decision day. Which I had to explain that to several people, actually, in publishing. I had to also explain financial aid to several people. Well, because the way that I wrote it, they're like, this? I'm like, no, that is in fact not how it works when you don't have money for college. It works this way.
Interesting. So when in the writing process did you come up with those first 2 lines?
When I started writing it, those lines came to me and they've never changed.
Oh,
although I think a comma changed in the second line, but the first line's never changed.
Oh, I love it. Love it.
Because I think the original, the second line was inside, that is. And I changed it to on the inside at some point, but the first line. I almost never change my first lines though, which might be because I'm stubborn, but I don't know. I never changed the first line of Brightly Burning or The Stars We Steal or this one. And I'm going to fight to keep the first line of my 4th one as well. Not like anyone's going to come at me with a sword, but there's something about first lines. I'm not precious about almost any other lines in my books, though. But for some reason, I can't write a book until I have a first line. So I usually feel pretty good about them.
So let's talk briefly about what this book is about. It is about a mean girls group of girls in a private high school.
Yes.
And each of them are assigned, they're trying to get into the Ivy League schools, and each of them are assigned to one Ivy League. Like our main character, Olivia.
That they are allowed to apply to.
Right. So what was your inspiration for the setup of this?
Yeah. So I've basically worked in college admissions essay consulting for years and worked volunteering primarily. I've done it as a paid consultant for a couple years. So that's why there is a character in this who basically does what I used to do. And so I pulled from some of those nuggets. Megan is one of many characters who has a little slice of myself in her because I did that job for a couple of years, freelance. But I've helped several dozen students get into college. Specifically, essays are my expertise as I'm a writer, but via that, I've gotten involved in strategy and building a list, and I've learned all of the weird rules of the current landscape of competitive college admissions, and it's just changed so much, even from when I applied. And it doesn't feel like I applied to college that long ago, but it was 20 years ago. And it's a whole new world. Like, I thought it was competitive when I was applying. And there's just all these wild stories and things that I've seen. And either students I know directly have experienced some of these wild things, and so I put them in the book, or I've seen them on forums. Students who apply to, let's say, 10 schools and they don't get into a single school. And so they literally don't get to go to college the next year. They have to take a gap year and apply again because they apply wrong or what have you. I have seen students cheat and lie on their applications and otherwise to get in. And there's all just these like unspoken rules, such as a school will only take 1 or 2 students from a given high school, sometimes only 1 if it's an elite school and it's a smaller high school. And so your friends, your fellow students are literally your competition. And it can literally be make or break getting 1 point higher than someone else on your GPA based on that class or that guidance counselor liking you, or it can be money. Like, that person's parents could afford to do this for that student, and it's really cutthroat. And some people, of course, take it very far, and I decided to write about horrible people, little bit dramatized, who would take it very seriously and intentionally take steps to better themselves and screw over others. But even just generally, it messes with students. And I wanted to write a book that would be fun. I wanted to write a book that would be pretty accurate to college admissions, competitive college admissions, but also that we're students who are in this, who are stressed. Most often it just like eats the students up and they're anxious and it's horrible. And I think it's awful that teenagers have to go through this. And I wanted them to feel like seen and to maybe have a little bit of fun with a book if they're going through college admissions or they've been through it, where they can like laugh and maybe enjoy a little like the extremes of what I ended up writing.
Yeah.
Just add murder.
Just add murder. But some of the things were really cutthroat, and you're saying that's actually based on some...
Some of them are real. Some of them I hope are not real. So, like, one thing, which it was a sabotage involving someone's coffee. You might know which one that is. At a test taking date. I hope that's not real. I really hope and in fact, I didn't even make that up. A friend of mine gave me that idea because she had been sick the day she took the SATs, like ill. And she said, so the worst thing that could possibly happen is if someone intentionally made someone ill at the SATs. And I hope that hasn't been done. There are a few other things that are real though. Yeah. There's one thing that I added because I spoke to someone who went to a boarding school, a very famous boarding school, and they told me one of the things that I added to that book that someone actually did. So I was like, okay. A lot of it's subtle though. And actually the Ivies are kind of subtle, but sometimes they're not. Like I've heard stories of just like a lot of social politics so that someone will lose the election for club president or what have you. And it's like the little things, the way that people will mess with others to be sure that their resume looks better than their competition's resume. And so that's why I built a lot of that on that, because that is the stuff that definitely goes on.
And I noticed in your writing, you tried to make it very contemporary. Like I have some notes here that you talked about COVID. It doesn't take place during COVID.
Oh, I have feelings about that.
You mentioned dick pics. I'm like,
I
dick
did.
pics.
And I was so worried that my editor was going to make me take that out. And I also had a moment, and so I tried to lampshade it in the text where I was like, it's really wrong. The moment where Olivia forgets to tell Ethan, I was like, is that assault technically? Because you really shouldn't. Anyway, yeah, also gross. Hate it. I was like, oh, just not what you want to see when you're going through someone's cell phone. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine.
But she used it for investigatory purposes.
She did. Oh, that was the thing I thought my editor would make me take out. That she thought about the dick pic in the course of the investigation. I was like, is this too much? But at the same time, it's technically a clue. So, I have a dark mind. I don't know. But so do teenagers. Actually, the one that I worry the most about is the theme party in the third act. I really plumbed the depths of myself to come up with ideas for that. And I'm very proud.
It was good. It was a good scene.
I was like, I hope people are uncomfortable with this joke, but I also really like this joke. So.
And
yeah.
What about COVID? How did you decide to actually mention
COVID?
So,
the regrets, I have them, but I don't. So, because it kills me, because some people hate it. Some people hate that that's in the book. And I was in this very precarious position. As such, I might even make a video about it, because I'm like, is this going to come across defensive? But also, this is actually an interesting discussion point. I was editing this book at the start of all of this. I got my edits in February, but I needed an extension. And my extension went into being stuck at home. And then I did several rounds of edits with my editor, and I was realizing this SAT test date that I mentioned literally just got canceled. I have to change that. That's the only reason the ACT is mentioned in this book instead of just the SAT, because the ACT didn't cancel their date and the SATs did. And I needed a student to have taken a test on a certain date. So that was kind of the start of it. And I was also realizing, like I had already written this with a year in the book. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, damn it. And it whether I moved it forward a year or if I moved it back a year, the book would feel dated in a different way. And if I moved it forward a year, like it's a whole other, I should have moved it forward a year is, although I still would have probably messed up COVID. And so when people read it, they have to mentally think, wait, they're physically at a school at the end of 2020. And I hope people don't think about it that hard. And the reason is that you're not allowed to make major edits to your book past a point. And I honestly, in April and May of 2020, did not think that I would still be in my apartment in December of 2020.
Right. Are dates mentioned in the book? Because I don't remember that.
Not explicitly, but they're called the class of 2025. The Harvard class of 2025. It's on the first page. Like, welcome to the class of 2025, which means I graduate now, which sets up the timeline. So my advice to readers is, if that annoys you, just pretend it's set later. Like, ignore the year. But I like the references to it in the sense that it actually solved the problem for me with Ethan and Olivia being co-editors. I had a really good reason for that all of a sudden that worked. And it gave me an essay joke, a really nice essay joke. They made it a lot richer and gave it texture that it didn't have before then. And actually, I had to change that from the original joke because my editor thought it was too dark, the first version of that joke. It's okay. Although I stand by my humor because I made an entire video about why you should be very careful about writing a COVID essay, and I stand by that.
Okay, someone on my live stream, I said I was going to interview you, and Cappuccino Crafts wants to know, what is the most challenging part about writing a twist in a thriller?
Oh God, the whole thing. It's just the most challenging thing. It's a series of things. So first, coming up with one that is good enough. That is so hard. At least personally, I can't write a book until I come up with a twist that I'm satisfied with. And coming up with one that feels both logically consistent, like you can make it hold together, but also fresh enough is really, really hard. And you still, like, I'm still half convinced, like, I didn't do it well. But, and so you have to, it's the confidence of, like, feeling like I both like that twist can work, but it's not going to feel like, because it'll ruin a book. A bad twist will ruin a thriller. And, like, seasoned thriller readers, like, I know this as a thriller reader, that a cheap or unsupported twist will ruin a book. So it's that pressure that becomes the hardest part. And then actually accomplishing it, like pulling it off. A really good thriller, they're deceptively easy. Like, people think they're easy because when you read them, they're fast paced, or they should be. And the writing doesn't have to be like Pulitzer Prize level writing for thriller to be good, which suits my writing style. But the hard part, I actually think they're much harder than other genres to write as generally, but also as a novice writer, especially now that I've written one. I'm like, don't try this at home if you've never written a book before. I could not have written this years ago because the layering, especially the middle, which is already the worst part of the book, it's more work. It's just more work. And essentially you have to write multiple versions of the story all at the same time. Like, you have to have one where the twist thread is there the whole time and it has to be logically supported. And then you have to layer a ton of stuff on top of it so that it's not obvious. That is just so hard. It's all the hardest part, but it's mostly just like balancing the logical consistency and pulling it off. And then the sleight of hand of hiding it. It's hard. And also knowing inevitably some thriller readers will guess anyway, like, especially seasoned ones. They'll see your tropes. And I know some people will spot my tropes and they'll be like, but for that reason in this particular book, and actually the next one, what I like to do is make sure that the motive and like the specifics are still really juicy, even if it's obvious. And that's what I kind of have fun with.
Oh, I do have one beef with you. Alexa Donne.
Okay. Oh no.
What do you have against the University of Maryland? That's where I went to school.
Really? So yeah. My mom went to University of Maryland.
Okay. And
that's why Olivia's from Maryland, because my family's from Maryland. And I actually really like the University of Maryland. So can we talk about this as almost like a spoiler? The main character doesn't go to the University of Maryland, and me, the author, I think she should have.
Oh.
Personally, I think my character made the wrong choice. Yes, I wrote it that way. But because I really like the University of Maryland, and you know what? She could have gone for like anyway. It's fine. So I'm team Olivia's mother and UMD personally. But yeah,
let's play a game. You like games?
Ish. Oh, I'm scared. Okay, yes.
Okay, everyone who reads the Ivies, I think, is going to think this is going to be a great Netflix series.
I hope so.
That would be so perfect. Have you gotten any nibbles? Not yet.
I have a film agent, but I haven't had nibbles. So If anyone in Hollywood is watching this, I'm thirsty. It'll be cheap to make. You only need one setting. It just has to look like a school. Come on, and you can cast unknowns. It's cheap. I'm cheap. Yeah.
Okay, well, for this exercise, we're going to make you the casting director, but I'm going to give you a time machine so you can time warp any actor, living or dead, to play the character at the perfect age. So if you want 17-year-old Betty Davis to play a role, you can get her. Okay?
Okay. Oh, I'm very bad at this. Honestly. Okay. And so this can be collaborative. I have some ideas, but I hadn't even thought of people who like classic movie stars. I hadn't even.
Okay, well, starting with Olivia. Olivia is our main character. She's the sort of English major junkie who's also a jock, right?
A little. She does crew. So the actress has to be tall. I would be upset if they cast a cute little petite thing, because that's not how she's written. I'm like, we need some love for girls who are 5'10" in YA. So that's a little self-inserty. Basically, the reason she rows crew, though, is I wish I had rowed, and I didn't, because I didn't want to get up at 5 a.m. And I really should have, because I would have been really good at it. So to row crew, unless you're I swear I'm demonstrating my lack of knowledge. The one who does The Calling. I had someone who rode in college check this book for me. I did have an expert read it so that it would be more accurate, because I never ended up rowing. If you're one of the actual rowers, it's good to be tall and it's good to be muscular. So it's good for. I actually had someone like approach me freshman year, and they were like, they looked at my body and they were like, "You would be good at this." And I was like, 5 a.m. wake up calls are not for me. That's why she rows. And so that's the hard part, because I would want them to be tall and I wouldn't want them to be too thin, because that would be sad for me. So I thought about it. Is that cheating to let people know that you prepped me for this?
No, it's fine.
Because I would have freaked out if you just told me this live. I'm so bad at casting, but I thought about it. And I'm going to think, like, and I thought in a more, these actresses are not plus size, but they're both tall and they're not like thin. And it is more modern. I was thinking of someone like Catherine Langford, who is on 13 Reasons Why and some other things as well. Because she looks tall to me. She looks like she could row. Or like someone like Haley Steinfeld, like when at the height of her career, when I was first starting to write YA, I was like, I would love a YA movie that she was in. She's a little older now, but like maybe it's because she did True Grit. Like she's got that, like, I feel like she could like handle herself. They're both a little too pretty for my own mental image of, because Olivia shouldn't be as pretty as the other Ivies, because it's part of her, like I wrote a stock YA outsider character. She's also a scholarship student, because why not layer the tropes in there? But that's such a thriller thing, like having the like slight other or outsider character. Like there's a reason they work well in thrillers, because it's easier for the reader to kind of put themselves in their shoes. But I'm open to suggestions, honestly, on Olivia. And in real casting, I would love an unknown.
Yeah, this is me pretending I know who those actresses are.
Catherine Langford's been in a ton of stuff. If you Googled her, you'd probably recognize her. Yeah. And Haley Steinfeld was also in like the Pitch Perfect movies. So. Oh,
okay.
Yeah, she joined in the second one. She's like the young one whose mom is Katie. Katie, what's her face from Married with Children.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to Avery. She is the leader of the Ivies, and
I love her, which is almost a spoiler to say. I love her.
She's a queen bee. She's the the Regina of the Mean
Yeah,
Girls.
she's the Regina George, but like, you know, she knows who she is, and she's just trying to get through life. That's not excusing any of her horrible behavior. I don't know if I'd want to be friends with any of them, but I'd probably go out drinking with Avery, maybe. Maybe, but I might watch my back. But only if she wanted something I had. So that's fair. And she wouldn't. So yeah, it's fine. Avery's hard. Like my mental image of Avery, though, legitimately, I don't know if you ever watched Veronica Mars. There was an actress on I'm like going also. There was an actress on Veronica Mars named Julie Gonzalo, and like she has that look. She's like that blonde, kind of just like generically pretty blondness. Someone like that. Avery's hard though, and I would love if you have thought of someone that you think would be perfect there. I'm very open to suggestions.
Well, for my age, the one person or the actress that would play these types of roles all the time was Morgan Fairchild.
Yes, that is the type though. Yes, it's like blonde, pretty, thin, but like not like supermodel pretty, but just generally very pretty. Yeah. Right.
Our next member of the Ivies is Emma.
Oh, Emma. She has to have kind of a girl next door feel to her. But with an edge, like she can have secrets. And I, again, it was like my brain went to modern, and I thought of someone like Catherine Newton. She was on Big Little Lies and also The Society on Netflix. Or Josephine Langford, who ironically is Catherine Langford's sister. She was in the After movies, which I know. But she kind of has that look for me where like she's pretty and plays off of being sweet, but can be a bitch basically. Like that's kind of the type. And I thought of those actresses.
And then we have Sierra.
Oh, I love Sierra. Honestly, Sierra, Sarah's the one that I know is going to be okay, and I have the most respect for Sierra. Gabriel Union is someone who was like in my mind when I was writing her character. And in fairness, she doesn't age, so she could probably play Sierra right now. But for me, it's like I grew up on Bring It On, so like Gabriel Union all the way.
And then, what do you call her? The spy master, Margot.
Margot is the forgotten Ivy. She gets the most short shrift in the text, and I apologize to her, even though she is a fictional character that I wrote. It's really, and actually I say it as a joke in the book that why are there only 5 Ivies? Because have you ever tried to have a friend group with more than 5 people? More than 5 is messy. Honestly, 5 is messy. Like it is so hard to have 5 people have 5 distinct personalities in a short work of fiction and keep them equally important when one of them dies, and then it's just poor Margot. I was thinking someone like Jamie Chung for her, like Korean. Okay. Like it would definitely, like I would not do the Hollywood thing where you cast someone who isn't Korean to play a Korean character, because that's something that bugs me in Hollywood. Because I always, like, you can tell. I know a lot of, like, I know that Hollywood doesn't seem to care, but I would want to cast a Korean actress. And to that end, she could be, like, it'd be kind of fun to get a K-pop or a K-drama actress. Oh. Well, right? But I like Jamie Chung because she's Korean American and she's really gorgeous. And I feel like Margot is really gorgeous. She's prettier than Avery, and Avery kind of hates it. Like, has a more like unique beauty and technically more money. So that's Margot for me. Like, and Margot, you have to also believe that she would have like designer bags and stuff. Like, she'd be really swank. So yeah.
The only one I could think of then is Margaret Cho, who used to be on a sitcom way back in the 90s. The first
I love that show. All-American
Girl. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. But I feel like Margaret Cho would hate Margot. She would probably punch her in the face, which I would support. Yeah.
Okay, let's go through some of the boys. Okay. There is Ethan Kendall.
I love
Kendall.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was not intentional, but really
was it?
Fits. The only reason his last name is Kendall is that I based his character on a real teenager that I worked with. I often will give the teens I work with like namesakes. That's the only reason that's his name. And then I made that joke. That was not intentional. Well, to that end, so he's kind of dreamy. And I was thinking of someone like Keenan Lonsdale.
I don't know who that is. But...
Well, I think he was in Love, Simon, but I know him from Dance Academy, which is a show that I love.
But is he Canadian? Is he Canadian though?
He is not. I think he's Australian, but it's fine. It's fine. Accent. I think just because I know him from Dance Academy, so which I recommend if you haven't seen it. It is a cheesy Australian soap opera about a professional ballet academy, and I love ballet stuff. And it's a legit. It's very tweeny. Like you will kind of hate them a little, but it's juicy. It's very juicy. So
that sounds like something my husband would really like.
So good. It's also like it'll reach into your chest and like pull your heart out several times. Like it like goes there with the characters.
And then we have Tyler, who is Emma's boyfriend and Avery's stepbrother.
And very important.
And I know you had mentioned in the as a description, he has like the CW looks.
So it could be anyone from the CW. And given I made a Cruel Intentions joke, it could be Ryan Phillippe. But like I was thinking it's basically any blonde. In current days, it would be a blonde dude with an undercut. In older school, he'd have the floppy hair and would be on the CW show or the WB show. We're like taking it back. And in current casting, I was thinking of like who would I cast now? So in the past, I would say like a Ryan Phillippe type. Definitely in the past. He has to be a little dude bro-y. I don't know if you've seen the new Alex Rider show on Amazon Prime.
I did see it.
IMDb TV.
That was
the
really
star
good.
of that, Otto Ferrant. He has the look. So like if I were casting it now, I would cast him.
I'd have to remember what he looks like, but that was a
Generic
surprisingly
blonde.
good.
And that's the
Good
thing.
show.
Tyler's just blonde and pretty and kind of like a he's not my type, if you couldn't tell. I would never date him. And that's definitely how Olivia feels as well. So
And the only other guy I wrote down here was Chris Harden, because he's sort of the stoner guy.
And his name is a joke, because when I was writing this book, I was on a writing retreat, and we did not watch the after film, but we did watch the after trailer as a group, and because the trailer had dropped and we found it quite funny. So his last name is an in joke to that movie trailer, because that's the character's name. So he can just be played by whoever the actor is who's in that. I don't know his name. Yeah, that's our little in joke.
Are there any other of the boy characters that you want to cast?
Seth, who is the catfish victim.
Oh, okay.
He has like what's his name? The guy from the OC, Brody. What's his first name? Like he's in Promising Young Woman now too. Like he kind of has like a goofy nice guy quality. That guy.
Okay. Now let's move on to the faculty. Now I know this one doesn't really get much page time, but Karen Bank had the Ivy Whisperer.
Oh,
she's a college counselor. That's
Karen's
sort of
Karen,
one.
And that was semi-intentional naming her Karen. The real reason she's named Karen is that my guidance counselor in high school, who wasn't very nice to me, was named Karen. Actually, is why that's her name. An actress though. Let's call her a Margot Martindale type, because Margot Martindale is in everything and wins an Emmy. So for everything, and that's like a loving joke because BoJack Horseman made the joke too. So we're gonna go with Margot Martindale.
Okay. And
Kathy Bates. Ooh, Kathy Bates might be fun. Underused in that role, but fun.
Yeah. And the other counselor, Mr. Tipton, who seemed a little young for me.
He is too
24.
Young. He's like about 24. The idea is like he graduated from Harvard and then washed out at his first job that daddy got him. So daddy got him another job. He's that type. He's a dude, bro. Ooh, how would I cast? Any of the Bachelors is who I would cast for that.
Okay, and then of course there's Head Mistress Fitzgerald.
Oh, I love how Cataldo just like gets under her skin. Ooh, who would be? I feel like that would need to be like a good character actress who could really like just enjoy playing a principal. I didn't think about the adults, so I'm stumped here. I actually had to do this on the fly. Do you have any ideas?
Well, if you're thinking character actress, the first one that popped in my mind, and I forget her name, but she's the very, very short woman that was on, she's in the original Dune. Linda Hunt. That's what I was thinking of.
Oh.
Real tiny character actress who has an attitude.
That would work. Yeah, I don't have strong ideas about head mistress Fitzgerald, so whoever they want to cast.
Let's move on to Detective Cataldo. Who do you have in mind to play the hard as nails detective?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would want to get, if I can, a masshole in there, like someone who's from Massachusetts who can do kind of the accent, working class. Though that said, loving Mayor of Easttown, I feel like Kate Winslet could do it, because if she can do the Delco accent, she can do a Western Mass accent. Yeah, although she's a little. I wrote Cataldo was in her like late 30s, early 40s, but I mean, in Hollywood, 50-year-old actresses look 35, so
exactly.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if they were actually casting it. It's the adults where you can cast like name actors to like bring interest to a project. So someone like Kate Winslet would actually be really fun. Let me think. Are there any? Actually, to that end, from the same show, just because top of mind, because I know she's from Massachusetts, Julianne Nicholson would be good. she's got the rough voice that I definitely imagine Cataldo being like a real Western Mass kind of girl, like raised blue collar, like pretty chill. Yeah, probably a little too chill. Honestly, sometimes bad at her job. And I took advantage of that. I definitely used Olivia in that sense. And that said, like talking about process, on the like Cataldo and Olivia's interaction changed the most over drafts. Because like how your main character interacts with law enforcement makes a huge difference. And I definitely had versions where Cataldo was meaner, where like, so it's interesting. I cheated a little though by having her let Olivia off the hook for honestly doing things she really shouldn't do. Breaking the law. I stretched it a little in terms of chain of evidence, but you know, needs must.
And finally, Olivia's mom.
Oh, Olivia's mom. See, I've thought about Avery's mom, but I haven't thought about Olivia's mom.
Well, let's do them both. Olivia and
Okay.
Avery's mom.
I know Avery's mom. Charlize Theron.
Oh!
I love her. And also she has a production company. Call me, you can play a role. Olivia's mom. Actually, I'd also like Kate Winslet to be Olivia's mom. I just want Kate Winslet in anything.
Any role.
She's now officially apologized for working with Roman Polanski, so I'm allowed to enjoy Kate Winslet again. So that was like, oh, Kate, I've literally loved you since I was 13. What are you doing? And I'm also really bad at like thinking, because you gave me a time machine. I'm really bad at like thinking outside of like current actors.
Oh, who played the mom on E.T. and Cujo? There's actors from the 80s. She was like the
I don't know her name.
all-American mom.
Honestly, like when people ask about dream casting on panels, I do panic. I really am glad that you prepped me. I just did not think of the adults. Because I'm just like, I'm glad I'm not a casting director, basically. See, some of my favorite moms aren't really Olivia's mom. So like, I would love it if like it was like Julie Andrews, like vintage Julie Andrews, or Shirley MacLaine, or like Debbie Reynolds. But none of them are Olivia's mom, as I wrote her. Oh, you know what? Meryl Streep. Let's just
of course.
say why not? Let's do Meryl Streep at any age. But I feel like especially like 1990s Meryl. Yeah, has that energy I'm going for. Like, yeah, that'll work.
Okay, and what is your next writing project?
Yes, I am writing another YA thriller. It is called Murder, She Texted, and it is basically my small town secrets thriller, because I love that trope, that kind of setup. But it's also a little meta. I was inspired by Murder, She Wrote. It takes place in a small town in Northern California instead of Maine. But it's basically a character whose mom dies and she moves in with her estranged grandmother in this tiny town. And her grandmother is a New York Times best-selling author of mystery fiction and has like a fan base, a movie, like movies based off of her books. And she's famous in their town because there was a murder in their town of a homecoming queen 50 years ago. And her grandmother decided to fictionalize that and write a book about it. And that's how she became a breakout bestseller. So every year around homecoming, like the whole town like transforms, like tourists come, there are murder tours. And this year that Cecilia moves to town, the homecoming queen is murdered in the same manner as her grandmother's best-selling novel, but also in the same manner as the original murder. And Olivia, her name's not Olivia. My brain.
Crossover.
Right? Oh, they would handle these stories very differently. You couldn't transplant them into the same mysteries. They wouldn't go very well. But Cecilia, basically, because she's grieving her mother dying, decides, you know what? I'm going to solve this murder because it involves my grandmother. And is it a copycat? And she basically falls down a rabbit hole of investigating essentially two murders, the current murder, but also has to dig into the one from 50 years ago and whether or not the guy who was apprehended and went to prison for it is the killer. So, yeah.
So when's the publication date?
Fall 2022. So I don't have like a month or a date yet, but I still have to finish it. So I'm
You
still
have
writing
plenty
it.
of time. You have plenty
Of
of time.
Theoretically, that's the thing with publishing timelines, though, and the whole that came up with the whole COVID thing. Like, you put the book to bed so far ahead of it coming out. So, like, I'm not done even writing it yet, and yet somehow it has to go to bed this summer. So, wish me luck. I'm almost done. I'm writing the climax right now. So I'm writing the most exciting part about the book. I'm writing the twist and the reveal. So.
Sounds fantastic. Okay. Now, anyone who's watched your channel knows how passionate you are about writing. You're so knowledgeable of the writing process, and you know the industry so much, and you're a great writer. Have you ever thought about becoming an agent?
Yes.
Oh.
I have. It's mostly just like, if I were ever going to do it, I would want to do it right. So it would mean I would only want to essentially apprentice at a top agency, which would mean probably moving, and I don't want to move to New York, and or just finding the right opportunity. But honestly, this is just going to be so practical, but no one will be surprised by this because they've watched my videos and I talk about like writing full time. I don't want to take the pay cut that I would have to take to switch my career completely, especially at this point in my life. Yeah. And also, honestly, I know realistically, I'd probably have to choose between that and writing. And what's funny is if you'd asked me the same question before I like really started writing books, before I got a book deal, I would have picked agent, no question. But now I don't think I want to give up writing. And it's not that there are agents who, like, there are agents who write as well. But at a certain point, if you really want to be successful in one of those, you have to pick. And I'm all in on writing. So, like, that's why, like, I have thought about it. But I feel like I would want to better serve my clients if I were an agent by not actively pursuing a successful traditional publishing writing career. Like, the volume of work it takes to write a book would compete. I don't know. But yes, I've thought about it. And in lieu of that, I just scout people, friends and whatnot, and I help them get agents. And I do lots of personal referrals to agents that I know. And I'm very proud when like people like go forward and sell books. And it is hilarious because theoretically, if I were an agent, and I'd repped even half the people that I've like championed, I'd probably have a lot of money. That's assuming I could also sell those books. I don't know. But yeah.
Well, I don't think you would have any trouble like getting relationships with publishers or whatever, because you're so personable.
It would be fun, but it never say never. You know, if I hit my 40s and some agency is like, work for us, maybe. But I'd have to make a lot more money off of books, like writing them, to throw away my day job, and I can't. And agenting does not pay well until it does, but it mostly doesn't. And I'm so practical, which I know it's like sometimes counter to the dreamer state that writers have, but no, I'm very much like, no, I literally have to know where my rent check is coming from.
Okay, I wanted to close out by, you know how James Lipton from the Actors Studio?
Yeah.
We're not going to do those questions, but I rewrote them for an author. Are you ready?
Oh dear, I'm scared. Yes. Everyone's going to discover like, oh no, she has exactly that kind of anxiety where she doesn't do well with spontaneous questions.
Okay, what word do you love that you tend to overuse in your writing?
Niggle. I have been dinged on that by my editor and my copy editor so often. And in fact, again, revealing, I know I will stop reading my reviews eventually. A review mentioned that word, and I was like, they said I overused it. I was like, no, because I know my copy editor forced me to get down to like 2 uses of that word, because there were like way more. That one in bog standard, I get 1 a book. And I don't even know if I'm using it in the current book. I love the term bog standard. It is British and it's very weird. And because it's British, I've been dinged on it by every copy editor I've ever had for using it too much.
Okay. What word do you hate that you tend to overuse in your writing?
Just.
Adverb
queen. It's a crutch and I can't stop. I'm aware of it and I still use it because I'm like, you know what? The energy it would take to not use the word just in the sentence, I will stop writing for the next 20 minutes. And so it's a later problem. And then I got some really bad filter words, but we'll go with just. Filtering is such a bad habit I have.
What tropes turn you on?
Literally, or just like in terms of being excited to write? Because that could go in so many directions. We'll keep it PG for the fam and the YA audience. I have so many. Hate to Love is just a classic. I love it anytime there's like conflict in the romance. Ironically, I keep writing soft boys and cinnamon rolls. I haven't written that dynamic, at least not in the thrillers I've written. Sharing a Bed. I haven't written that one, but I read a friend's thriller, and I was critique partnered for her, and she used that, and I was like, this book is now gold because you came up with a reason for your two characters to share a bed. Good job.
Did they have a little towel or sheet between the...
I think they did the head to foot thing.
Okay.
That one. But I should think about writing. Like, well, are parties a trope? Because I love party scenes and I rely on them like way too much. The Ivies has 2, and currently this one also has, this has 3 if you count High School Dance as a party. So I have 3 so far in this draft. We'll see if they survive.
What tropes turn you off?
Oh, so many. So in thrillers specifically, I call it fatal attraction. I hate the bunny broiler thing, essentially, where the twist is that a woman went crazy because of a dude. Not into it. I think it's a little demeaning. Not that romance can't be motivation for someone going off the deep end, but actually coupled with that, I'm really sensitive to mental health twists. Because they can be done so badly. So like it's like a no trope, a hate trope when it's like really like egregious, like because crazy. Don't like that.
What is your favorite curse word that you use in your writing?
Well, in the Ivies, it's definitely demonetize. It's the F word.
I'm not monetized, so.
Oh, good. And then it's the F word. For like, I love throwing it in there, and actually it gets the same treatment as adverbs do for me. Just on a first draft, it's fuck this, fuck that, and then later I'm like, edit them down so the ones that you use are more effective, because I just love throwing it in there. And the one that I haven't used that I would if I could, and I will if I write adult and I'm allowed, it's the C word, because I love to. I like to be a little British about it and just throw that out in casual, not literally casual conversation, but that one can land a real punch when you need it to. So, yeah.
And we are talking about charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent.
Yes.
Okay.
I have to be careful too, because like I'm all about reclaiming that word, and I know not everyone is, and so I use it judiciously in private conversation.
Drag queens use it prolifically. So anyway.
I do not have a problem with that. And the Brits don't either. I'm like, maybe I'm a little too like British. I am not afraid of a
bit of an Anglophile, are we?
Yes, that's the technical cause of it. Because my father did not raise me, but genetically, my dad is British, so I guess that makes me half. I mean, I'm a little more than half. I got a lot of Irish rolling around in here as well, so I'm just very Anglo. But I didn't grow up there, so.
What type of character would you like to write that you have not written already?
That's a great question. Well, I'll go with Hate to Love. I want to write like a really contentious kind of like sharp-edged romantic lead. But I have to be careful because in the hate trope area, I don't like it when it's like abusive douchebag gets the romance reinforcing bad relationship dynamics.
Sort of the bad boy.
Yeah, but I like a Mr. Darcy though, where it's like you just misunderstood him and he's not actually abusive. Yeah.
What type of character would you absolutely hate to write about?
An actual abusive bad boy. I just don't have the taste for it because, like, especially although I will say, so there's a love triangle in my current thriller, and two very different kind of guys. Neither one of them is like a douche bad boy, but neither is perfect. And I will admit, I did write a few scenarios where if it were me, I would punch them in the face and walk away. And my character doesn't. So I've walked that line a little. Because this thing, my reaction is like, I don't even have time for this. No. And I shut it down. And so I just can't write that kind of character because I would just be like, bye. Yeah.
Fair enough.
We only have so much time in our lives. No one has time for that nonsense.
Now, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear the booktube goddess say is her favorite part of your writing? In other words, how would you like your writing to be remembered?
The characters.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, I want to hope to believe I'm decent at it. Because I'm from fandom. I just love character-driven writing. I love reading it. I don't think it's plot. I shouldn't nag myself so much, but if you have to have a little bit of humility about your own writing, so.
I thought the plot of the Ivies was quite well done. So.
Oh, thank you. I've had to push myself on plot, and that's the thing. You cannot necessarily feel that you're naturally gifted at something, and you can get better at it. And maybe honestly, it might be why I like thrillers so much. I have to force myself. They have to be plotted. They have to be plotty. Things have to happen. So that's nice.
Okay, well, I think that is all we have. Thank you, Alexa Donne, for coming here and letting me interview you.
Thank you.
Everyone, please check out Alexa's book, The Ivies, and check out her AuthorTube channel, which you do AuthorTube types of things, but you also do BookTube.
I do.
Sort of book reviews as well.
I love it. I walk a fine line, I know, as an author, reviewing books, talking about books I've read, but I love it. It makes me a better writer, like thinking critically about what I like and don't like about books, and then speaking diplomatically, like it's made me a little bit better. Like I like to talk about books in a very crafty way, like as a writer, because I read like a writer, so I kind of can't escape it. Yeah.
And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like this video and do all that YouTube-y stuff. Until we meet again, Alexa Donne, may all the books you read be blessed.